Today we are looking at a case from the second part of the 19th century, so sit back as we go to the USA. Mary Mormon was born in 1862 in Philadelphia during the height of the American Civil War. At the time, Philadelphia played a crucial role as a major supplier of materials and equipment for the Union Army. The city also established numerous military hospitals and aid societies to care for wounded soldiers returning from the battlefields. But little Mary did not have to worry about the war. By the time she was 3 years old in 1865, the fighting had ended and the people of Philadelphia were beginning to return to a sense of normality. The Mormon family consisted of Mary, her mother and father, and Mary's 4 older siblings. They lived at 1246 Orkney Street, a working-class district of the city, and while Mary's mother stayed at home to raise the children, Mary's father worked as a shoemaker, a skilled trade that provided a modest but steady income. However, in 1866, tragedy struck the family when he died, leaving Mary's mother a widow. Mary was the youngest of the Mormon children. She was a bright and gentle presence who made a lasting impression on everyone she met. She was known as Little Mary Mormon, not just due to the fact she was the youngest in her family, but because the name reflected the deep affection the neighbourhood held for her that she seemed to carry with her wherever she went. She had golden hair, bright eyes, and the kind of innocent charm that could bring a smile to the face of even the most unfriendly individuals. On Sunday the 6th of September 1868, Mrs. Maria Mormon was getting ready for church and had planned on taking Mary with her, but as the hour approached, she reconsidered as she thought that the service might be too tiring for her youngest child. Instead, she told Mary to stay home in the care of her 2 older sisters. Once her mother had left the house, Mary went outside to play on the front steps with a few neighbourhood children, something she did most days. They stayed there chatting and amusing themselves in the usual way, when suddenly they saw that a man had appeared on the corner of a street, who seemed to be watching them. He then motioned for Mary to come over. One of the girls, named Caroline Dinglacker, told her not to go, but Mary got up and walked towards the man. The others stayed on the step watching. They were somehow stuck to the spots as the man took Mary's hand and walked off with her. She did not look back. When the church service ended, Mrs. Mormon started to walk back towards her house. She was met by her 2 eldest daughters, who had come running to meet her with pale faces and anxious voices. She asked them what was the matter, and when they told her what had happened, the lady could hardly comprehend what she was hearing. Mary, her lovely gentle daughter, was missing. When she neared her home, the street was already in chaos. Word had spread quickly, and neighbours had come out to see what had happened. In working-class districts like theirs, there was no cold detachment, no quiet isolation behind closed doors. When in need, everyone helped each other. Everyone began searching for Mary. No alley or empty lot was left unchecked. The police were contacted, and once they arrived, Lieutenant Whitcraft coordinated the search efforts. They worked tirelessly to try and find the little girl, but by late into the night, they had not found her. The search continued the next day, but without success. By now, Mary's mother was nearly out of her mind with worry, gripped by fear and the unbearable strain of waiting. The youngest of her children, gone in a moment, led away by a man no one recognised. Her imagination offered no comfort. The possibilities it conjured were far too dark. Officers were dispatched across the city, even into the surrounding countryside, but by nightfall, there were still no answers as to the whereabouts of little Mary Mormon. Early the next morning, Tuesday the 8th of September, a milkmaid named Caroline Ludman was making her way across a vacant lot, carrying a heavy pail of milk, which she was going to deliver to the homes in the 19th ward. As she crossed the field, she spotted what appeared to be a child's dress, lying a short distance from the path. Curious as to what she had actually seen, she turned back and looked again. This time she saw it clearly. It wasn't a dress. A child was lying there. She looked more closely and saw the body of a little girl, and it was apparent that she was dead. The scene was grim. Nearby stood an old barn, which was used as a carpenter's shop, though it was empty at such an early hour. The lot itself was strewn with rubbish and was used by residents for dumping whatever waste they had. It was a lonely, neglected place that the body of this little child had been left. Caroline ran quickly to get help, and before long, a few local people had gathered at the scene. The police arrived soon after and took control of the situation. They realised that the deceased girl's clothes and hair matched the description of the missing child, Mary Mormon. However, they also remembered that they had previously searched for this area, so the child must have been killed elsewhere, and her body only recently placed there. Officers carefully transported the deceased child to the mortuary, where Dr. Shapley conducted an autopsy. When the police informed Mrs. Mohrman of the discovery of her daughter's body, a wave of sorrow swept over her. Neighbours quickly gathered around, offering their condolences and support, but the depth of her grief was so profound that no words could truly capture the pain she felt. As news of the discovery spread through the community, it sparked a wave of shock, outrage and deep horror. Determined to see justice done, the mayor offered a substantial reward for the capture of the perpetrator, and this sum was soon increased by generous citizens who believed firmly in swift and decisive punishment. In the days that followed, the value of a good reputation became more apparent than ever, as anyone with a hint of suspicion attached to their name, especially those known for troubling behaviour around children, fell under intense public scrutiny. The autopsy confirmed that Mary had died on the very day she disappeared. The cause of death was determined to be strangulation. In addition to this, her body bore clear signs of violence. Bruises were found on her neck, wrists and arms, which indicated a struggle. Her underclothes were stained with blood, and the examination revealed that she had been violated before her death. The funeral of little Mary Mormon was held on the 10th of September at St. Boniface Catholic Church, and the entire neighbourhood came out to witness the solemn occasion. The church was crowded, every pew filled, and the aisles lined with mourners. It was a deeply sorrowful scene, with the grief of the child's death evident in the hushed stillness and tearful faces of those gathered. The following day an inquest began, and after careful examination of the evidence, the jury concluded that the child had been abused, strangled, had been killed by an individual or individuals whose identities remained unknown. The police continued their search for the perpetrator and followed every lead with determination. Several suspicious men were quickly arrested, which raised hopes of a breakthrough. Among them was John Hanlon, a 20-year-old barber who lived near the Mormon's residence. Witnesses reported that Mary was last seen walking through the alleyway near his yard. Although some regarded Mr. Hanlon as an odd character, and there had been previous accusations of him assaulting young girls, no direct evidence connected him with Mary's disappearance. He lived with his 17-year-old wife in a house he shared with his parents and his younger brother and sister, and notably, he did not join the search efforts after Mary went missing. However, after a thorough investigation into his whereabouts and background, he, like the other suspects, was released without charge. As days passed without any progress, public frustration mounted, and the police came under heavy criticism. Accusations of inefficiency, blundering, and ignorance were levelled against them, with many people believing the investigation had been mishandled from the start. With no name, no fresh leads, and no additional witnesses, the question remained, who killed little Mary Mormon? 1 year later, in October 1869, another incident revived suspicions. Two young ladies, Mrs. Ann Boas and her 16-year-old sister Clara Ritchie, were walking home when Clara noticed a man following them and behaving suspiciously. They were in a sparsely populated area when, without warning, the man struck Annie on the back of the head with a stone, causing her to stumble. She managed to run and started to scream murder while the man gave chase to Clara. A passerby named Oliver Ottinger heard the cries and saw the chase, so ran after the man and apprehended him. The authorities were contacted, and the man was then taken to the alderman and identified himself as Charles Hanlon. Although he had been arrested, he was not formally charged. Instead, after paying compensation to the young ladies, he was released and the case was settled. Just a month later, a man attempted to assault a 10-year-old girl who was playing outside the Tabernacle Methodist Church. The man lured her behind the building, but her screams attracted the attention of a blacksmith, who quickly intervened, subdued the attacker, and handed him over to the police. The man gave his name as Charles F. Harris and was taken into custody and later tried, convicted, and sentenced to 5 years in Mohrman prison. However, Charles F. Harris was soon identified to be none other than Charles Hanlon, the man who had attacked Mrs. Ann Boas and Mrs. Clara Ritchie just a month earlier. His attempt to hide behind a false name had failed, and it was then discovered that this man had constantly used aliases when dealing with the police, and when the authorities investigated him further, they discovered that his real name was John Hanlon, the man they had arrested a year earlier on suspicion of the murder of Mary Mormon. While in prison, Mr. Hanlon shared a cell with a man named Michael Dunn, a petty thief who was serving a sentence for larceny. Mr. Dunn, however, was no ordinary criminal. He had a long history, including multiple convictions in England, which eventually led to his transportation to Australia. After completing his sentence there, he made his way to America, where he resumed his criminal activities. After a few days in the cell together, Mr. Dunn approached officers with a disturbing statement. He claimed that Mr. Hanlon had spoken to him in detail about the murder of Mary Mormon. According to him, Mr. Hanlon had described the girl as being around 9 years old and had told him that he strangled her in the basement of his house on Sunday the 6th of September, then calmly watched as neighbours searched the area for her. He went on to say that Mr. Hanlon had also said that in the early hours of Tuesday the 8th of September, he had carried the girl's body to a vacant lot and left her there. With this chilling new information, the police formally charged John Hanlon with murder. The trial opened on the 31st of October 1870 and drew a packed courtroom, filled with people eager to hear the details of the tragic case. News of the murder had spread widely, and the public's interest was intense. Every seat was taken, as spectators, some seeking justice, others simply curious, gathered to listen closely to the evidence and testimony presented throughout the proceedings. John Hanlon, accused of murdering Mary Mormon, appeared calm and attentive as the trial began. One of the prosecution's key witnesses was Michael Dunn, the convicted thief who had been pardoned in exchange for his testimony. He told the court that he didn't know John Hanlon before he shared his cell and only learned about Mary Mormon's murder from Mr. Hanlon himself. He said that he was born in Manchester in England and had been sent to Australia as a young man for his crimes. He added that after serving his time there, he came to America, where he survived by stealing until he was eventually caught and ended up in prison once again. He said that Mr. Hanlon arrived in his cell on the 29th of December 1869 and a few days later confessed to killing the little girl, describing the child as being 9 years old and having light hair and blue eyes. The courtroom grew still as Michael Dunn told how John Hanlon had committed the terrible crime. He said that he had told him that he had gone to Fisher's Beer Saloon around 3 p.m. and stayed there until 7:30, then returned home and sat on the steps. Mr. Dunn claimed that Mr. Hanlon had boasted that he then disguised himself so even his mother wouldn't recognise him, slipped out the back of the house into the alley, and waited. When the opportunity arose, he lured young Mary away, killing her in the outdoor toilet behind his home. Mr. Dunn went on to claim that Mr. Hanlon had said that he then pushed her body through the cellar window and after removing his disguise, went back upstairs, arriving at around 8:30 p.m. There was a sigh in the courtroom, but Mr. Dunn had not finished. He looked at the jury and said that the defendant told him that he had worked all day on the Monday, then got up before dawn on Tuesday the 8th of September and disposed of the body. Spectators leaned forward in their seats, some exchanging glances, others sitting motionless as they tried to grasp the weight of the claim. The defence quickly dismissed Michael Dunn's testimony. However, Mr. Dunn insisted that he had never been approached by detectives or pressured in any way to elicit a confession from John Hanlon. Charles Moss took the stand and recalled that about 4 o'clock in the morning, on the day Mary Mormon's body was discovered, he saw a man walking quickly and carrying what looked like a bundle in his arms. He said that the figure moved with purpose, but something about the way he held the bundle struck him as odd, like he was trying not to draw attention to it. He added that he didn't recognise the man and couldn't make out his features clearly in the dim lights. A lady named Louisa Adams also testified. She said that on the night that Mary Mormon went missing, she was standing at the corner of 5th Street, near the church, talking to a young man named David Maguire, when she saw a man walking with a small girl who was crying. The girl wore a pink and white dress and no hat. Miss Adams said that as they passed, she heard the man say, "Don't cry, Mary, I'll give you 5 cents. I'm your uncle." The man was dressed in dark clothes and wore a black cap pulled low over his eyes. When shown the dress that Mary had been wearing, Miss Adams said she recognised it as the same one the little girl had been wearing. Mary's 11-year-old sister also testified. She told the court that the last time she saw Mary was when she was sitting outside with friends and Caroline Dinglacker came by, asking for help with a baby carriage. Hannah said she stayed behind, but Mary went with Caroline and walked past the Hanlon house. Hannah said Mary never came back. When she asked Caroline where she was, Caroline told her that she had gone with a man. The most emotional witness was the mother of the young victim, who took the stand to describe in heartbreaking detail her frantic and helpless search for her missing daughter. She recounted the last time she saw Mary, the growing panic as the hours passed, and the sleepless nights spent hoping for her safe return. Her voice trembled as she spoke, her words leaving a deep impression on everyone present. The courtroom fell silent and visibly moved by her sorrow, as the reality of the tragedy became painfully clear through a mother's grief. When it came for the defence to present their case, John Hanlon's lawyer stood and addressed the court. He argued that the prosecution had spent a full week laying out disconnected facts that made no sense when tied together by the word of Michael Dunn, a convicted criminal with a dubious reputation. He said that without Mr. Dunn, there was no case. He told the jury that he would prove that John Hanlon wasn't where the prosecution claimed he was, and would provide alibis showing Mr. Hanlon's innocence. He also pointed out that several of the prosecution's supporting witnesses had given very different statements during the coroner's investigation. The first witness was John Fisher, who ran the bar at 5th and Diamond. He told the court that Mr. Hanlon was in his saloon from about 7:15 to 8:15 p.m, the night that Mary disappeared. He described Mr. Hanlon's clothes, a white shirt with brown stripes, light trousers, and he was not wearing a coat or hat. Next came Kate Hanlon, John's teenage sister. She described the family home and recalled that 13 people were in the house that Sunday night. She remembered seeing John leave the house and go to the saloon, and later come back and go into his barber shop. At no time did she see him wearing blood-stained or dishevelled clothes. Another witness was Mary Quinn, a cousin of the defendant. She confirmed that she had arrived at the Hanlon home between 6 and 7 that evening and saw John, his wife, and his mother pass through the barber shop. 14-year-old Emma Bush also gave testimony. She told the court that on the evening Mary went missing, a man had asked her for directions to Dauphin Street, and after she told him how to get there, he had asked her to go with him, which she refused to do, and instead walked to where Mary was sitting. She said that later when she was going home, she saw John Hanlon sitting on his front steps, and strangely, he too asked for directions to Dauphin Street. After the last witness had given evidence, both counsels delivered their final arguments. The prosecution insisted that the timeline matched their evidence, that Michael Dunn's testimony was credible, and that they had proved John Hanlon's guilt beyond any doubt. In contrast, the defence attacked Mr. Dunn's credibility, pointing out that his claims were uncorroborated and branded him an unreliable career criminal. They urged the jury not to condemn a man or label his entire family as liars based solely on the word of such a witness. They said that in their opinion, the case had been built by detectives motivated by the $1,000 rewards who had coached Mr. Dunn and entrapped Mr. Hanlon. They also reminded the jury of a key point in the prosecution's own case, that the killer must have known the child, yet Caroline Dinglacker, who was with Mary on the day she disappeared and knew Mr. Hanlon, had said that she did not recognise the man who took Mary. The jury deliberated for over a day, carefully considering the evidence and conflicting testimony. When they returned to the courtroom with a verdict, they found the defendant, John Hanlon, guilty. John Hanlon's lawyer requested a new trial, but the court denied it. On the 11th of December 1870, he returned to court for sentencing. The judge then asked him if he had anything to say. John then stood up, and holding the Bible, he condemned the witnesses who had testified against him. He said that they had not told the truth and had been paid by the detectives Smith and Taggart. Looking at the judge, he then urged that future juries remember his final words. and not let perjury lead to more wrongful convictions and wrongful deaths, he then kissed the Bible. Following this, the judge sentenced him to hang. His execution, however, was postponed until the 1st of February 1871. 2 weeks before his execution date, he sent for Detective Smith to apologise to him and Detective Taggart for his earlier outburst in court. He still did not confess to the crime, but showed some signs of remorse. He wore rough clothes against his skin, gave up tobacco, slept on the cold prison floor, and lived on just bread and water. 2 priests visited him regularly and guided him spiritually. Only officials, his lawyer, and a few members of the press were permitted to attend the execution. On the scaffold, John Hanlon forgave those who had wronged him and asked for forgiveness in return. His final words were, "Jesus, have mercy upon me. Holy Mary, pray for me. St. Joseph, intercede." John Hanlon was then hanged. Hello everyone, and thank you so much for listening. As usual, please leave any comments or feedback you may have, and I hope to see you all again in the next brief case.